Shut up and sit down.
Welcome to the Bricks King podcast, where I'm going to bend your ear about Lego, review those amazing bricks and plastic, and discuss what is new and up and coming around the Lego world. I'm your minifig host, Matt. Let's bet on it. Welcome in, everybody. How are we doing? We've got another Lego Masters recap show today for season number 2. This is episode number 11, the penultimate episode before the season ends. It is just massive to even think about that we have reached this point where things are finally about to end. So today, talking in this show, talking about this specific episode, this was probably, I'll say it, this was probably the coolest build episode in a long time because you're defying physics. I know they've done a hanging build. I know they've done wearables. I know they've done things that they had to withstand shaking and wind and all that kind of stuff. This takes the cake. So for this week's build, they had one simple task. They had to build a castle off of a wall, a hanging castle off of the wall. And they're judged on length. They're judged on aesthetic, obviously the best looking. And here is where how they're building this. They are using 1x2s that are obviously they're probably longer than 1x2s that are sunk into the wall. But 1x2s, 10 of them, you get essentially 20 studs of contact. That is it. Not 50, not all these technical things. That is it. Now, aside from that, you can build your castle however you want. If you're going to make it shorter, okay, that might be a detriment to you. If you want to make it super long, okay, that might be a detriment to you. It may not. So let's talk about what we did here. What they did, not what we did, but what the awesome builders did this week. So the first ones up were Mark and Steven. And I know we're kind of going out of order than what we usually do, but Mark and Steven were up first. They built the Gem Mine Castle. This thing was really neat. The gem dragon that they had built out of translucent pieces that was sunken into the castle, like into the main arch, the main doorway. That was wicked in the way that was done. I really appreciated how that was done, just because you have something that was so large and it just looked, oh my God, it looked amazing. It looked better than just about any dragon I have probably ever seen. So I was really impressed by that. What they did again is they did brick-built figures. They have done it the entire time. I'd say the entire time. Just about the entire time in this competition, they have done brick-built figures, not just minifigs. And it looks awesome. They did it yet again. I can't get enough of that. I love how those are done. They just add a different scale to it, and you really appreciate it a little bit more. So the next big thing that I noticed was the color of their castle. The color of their castle was exquisite, because it wasn't the boring gray castle that you see, that Lego has done in the past, or that they currently do, like the Creator 3-in-1. And that's not anything against Lego. I just like seeing colorful things. And some of you are going to say, it wasn't that colorful. It was outside of the norm. It was white. It had, a color of blue. I'm not sure what the color was of this, but it had that lighter colored blue. You just had different colors that just really embodied a different castle, a very fictional, very just storybook kind of feel to it is, I guess, the best way to explain it. And then you have that dragon that is in the middle. They had things that were hanging off the side. It was really neat. I mean, okay, to go back to Ninjago, if you saw I don't know what season it is, but with the clouds, where they went to the clouds, where it had to do with the Skull Sorcerer, right? That season. And they had that giant whitish gold castle floating in the clouds. That is what this reminded me of. Now, obviously I don't think there was any gold on it, but it was just the white, and the way that it looked, it was really, really cool. Oh man, it was really neat. So that was their build. I was impressed by it. Let's talk about the next one here. The next one, well, We all know what is going on here. Let's go to Caleb and Jacob. Caleb and Jacob did a collapsing castle. Oh my God. This thing was just insane. Super intense the way this thing was done. What they did is they created a castle that was on the wall, and it looked more like a modular than a castle. Anyway, but this thing was supposed to be like a jousting match. You had your little castle that was along the edge of the wall, and then you had this long, narrow space that was this jousting course or whatever they want to call it. I don't know what they refer to those as, but you have that. And then at the very end, I love the idea of the pier, because that's what it looked like. It looked like a pier sticking out into the ocean. It looked like the pier was cracking at the end of this. It was so neat in the way that it was done. Just how they were able to make it build up into what this was. They built it so it looked like it was cracking. Like that is not the easiest thing to do. It was really neat. And then it had two different angles, declining angles that were, falling into the pier. Now the story behind it was that this dude was at the end of the pier fishing and caught a way bigger fish than was expected. And this thing started cracking the pier. Now, fictional, obviously. The first thing would be like, okay, if this guy's hanging onto this fish and the pier is cracking, he must have some mega strength to be able to hold onto the pier as this thing's falling in. But that aside, that was really cool. I like the idea of that. I like that fictional part of it. There was a cool little design, a cool little story to it. I really enjoyed that. That was super cool. As far as getting back to what their build was, you had the jousting match. I thought looked great. You had all the minifigs there. The castle building itself it reminded me of the corner garage because of its color. It reminded me of, I believe, was it maybe the pet shop with the apartment that was next to it? How it was kind of rounded to a certain degree. I like the rounding that was done on the peak on the right side on the top. That was really neat. I don't quite know what those pieces that were used were, but they look sharp. Now I'm not quite sure how they attach theirs to the wall. I don't know if they used Technic stuff to do it. Some of them did. Some of them were using a lot of Technic. Some didn't. So it's just a different way to go about it. And then at the end of the day, you've got this gorgeous castle that is hanging on a few 1x2s. And it's just really sharp. So Natalie and Michelle, or Michelle and Natalie, depending on how you want to phrase it. Michelle and Natalie did a cardboard castle, and their story behind this was fantastic. I've really come to appreciate how they can really tell a story with their build, where you don't just have to, I don't have to know what the story is. I can kind of glean from what they have put together what is going on. And it really worked out well this time. So their castle world is of an imaginative world of a child using boxes. You've been a child at some point in time in your life. Hopefully at some point in time in your life, you've used cardboard boxes and you're like, you know what? I'm going to make a spaceship, or I'm going to make a house, or in this case, I'm going to make a castle. And that's what is going on here, because if I remember correctly, this fictional child, they were supposed to be moving, and they've got all these boxes of toys and stuff like that, and they're using these cardboard boxes. And I really like the idea on how they did that, how you had a box that was down on the bottom. It wasn't attached to the wall, but it just sold the story even more so. And then you have all these little things that you would find in a young kid's room, all these little toys and little knick-knack type things that are in the box. Those were really cool the way those were done. But what really stood out to me is they had an open box that was hanging from the wall. So they built the flaps to make it look like it was open. And on the box itself, they built in things that you would see a kid draw, like the castle towers. That was drawn, what would look like a child drawing, they did in brick. What would look like a kid, scribbling water at the bottom of their castle, they did in brick. It was fantastic. I could not get over that tiny detail. I say tiny. That was like a massive detail for something that they did for this build. I was blown away by how well that translated to the build. I understand being, as a kid in my past and then seeing it from adult eyes now, I see how difficult that was to do, but how cool it made the overall build. Now, one of the other things that they did here is they created a telescope. Now, originally they wanted this telescope to be way longer than what it was. They were hoping it would have been way longer. I'm not sure how many more feet they would have wanted out of this, but it just didn't work out. And I don't, obviously it was a design flaw somewhere and they just weren't able to get it to work, but they did get it up and going. And it looked amazing. It was truly cool to see, maybe not the entire thing of what they originally had hoped for, but seeing the telescope and just kind of getting that vibe from it, that was really cool. Now, with that in mind, obviously you need it to be longer. If you're going for length as part of this challenge, you've got to have it much longer than what it was. However, what I found interesting was, and Jamie brought this up, they did not use any Technic whatsoever to attach to the wall. Zero, zilch, nada. Now, maybe that was a downfall. Some of you are going to be like, well, see, if they would have done Technic, maybe. But just think about that. No Technic, no structural integrity there that some of the other teams may have used, or in this case, these girls may have used in previous builds, and you're going away from it, or maybe they just chose not to do it altogether. Either way, I thought that was a really cool idea. Now, one of the downfalls that I saw with their build was they didn't use all of the 1x2s that were hanging off of the wall, which is, well, it could make it look naked. It could have looked a little bit bigger, or a little bit better and made it a little bit bigger. Who knows? Honestly, really, who knows? But as far as I know, oh my goodness, I love that. From the kid inside of me, like the 7-8-year-old inside of me, I'm like, oh my God, this is so cool. So the last team here, Zach and Wayne, last but not least, right? Zach and Wayne, they did a Heaven's Castle. I thought this was really cool. There was a very sincere story behind this. So it was an Asian theme because they are Asian. They were going after their heritage here, which, hey, that was a great decision to be able to do that, and they executed it flawlessly. So the idea of this thing was, yes, they're creating this kind of this temple / castle in the Asian theme, but it was a memorial to one of their friends that had passed on from cancer at the end of the build. And it was the minifig that was supposed to resemble him and a motorcycle because he rode his motorcycle, from what they were saying. So I really appreciated that. It was rounded at the end. He had his own little spot there. That was cool. That was different. I didn't quite expect that. But with that in mind, they had a super long build. You had, I guess, walkway, and then you had the castle in the middle of the build. Like, I cannot stress that enough. In the middle of the build. How on earth do you manage to pull that off? That is some serious strength. I don't care who you are. If you aren't impressed by the fact of how strong that thing was and how sharp that thing looked, you just need to get out. You must not love Lego. You must not appreciate the difficulty in which that was done. Now, one of the cool things that I noticed in their build, they took 2x2 rounded bricks that were strung together. I'm not quite sure how they did that, but they were strung together to make the curve of the roof. I was just shocked at how beautiful that thing looked. It blew me away. I could not get over how 2x2 round bricks, and if I'm not mistaken, they may have had the little rough edges on the sides. The little vertical slots that are on the side. If you can't understand how cool that is, you're just missing the point today. It was really cool in the way that was done. So that's the 4 teams. That's where they stand. That's what they built. So what the judges were going for this week was 2 things. who has the longest build and who has the best/favorite build of the judges, obviously. It told the best story, executed the best as far as their story goes, whatever that might be. So the longest build went to Zach and Wayne. 6 feet. 6 feet this thing measured. Just stop and think about that. 6 feet. That is a long stinking way, dude, to be sticking out of a wall with the mass of that thing. That was impressive. Caleb and Jacob, they won the favorite/best build, best design of the judges. Oh my goodness, that is impressive too. Their build was cool. I already told you, it looked like a modular mixed with a castle. The storytelling behind it was fantastical. Probably one of my favorite things that I've seen in a long time. So that brings us to the bottom two, because the other two teams, they are through to the finale. One other team can make it. One. So you had Michelle and Natalie, and then you had Mark and Steven. Mark and Steven's build was really cool. Michelle and Natalie's build was really cool. Obviously, Michelle and Natalie not getting the telescope the way it should have been, longer or to the desire of making it like kind of telescopic to a certain degree. I think what they might have been going for is to see if they could get it to move, maybe. Anyway, they went home. They are going home. Mark and Steven were saved. They were saved. And here's my question to you. We've seen changing of the guard happen. And I'm just going to put this out there. I'm curious to know. I know what I think. But think about this for a moment. Okay, Zach and Wayne have maybe faltered once out of all these episodes to this point. Caleb and Jacob, maybe once, continuing to improve. Mark and Steven, did turning in the golden brick shake them up to a point where it's like, I don't know that it's going to be what it was before. Like, is it something where it plays mind games with you, where you turn in the golden brick and you've lost that sense of immunity, and you are literally on the edge thinking, man, we could go home this week. And they have had many times where they have been on the precipice of being kicked out. Now, they had their saving grace with their golden brick, but many times they've been at the top. So the question now becomes, who takes home the gold, really? Who takes home the custom trophy, the big prize, the big cheese of the $100,000, which after taxes isn't a whole ton of money, but free money's free money, right? I still have a horse in the game. If y'all go back to the very first episode that we did with this, I said Natalie and Michelle, Zach and Wayne. They were my horses. Natalie and Michelle, I'm sad to see go, and I'll touch on them in a minute, but I think it's going to probably come down to the two that were the best this week, because next week you get to build whatever you want, but it has to look different between night and day. When the lights go out, what is going to be that feature that separates you from the others? And I'll tell you what, my money might be on Zach and Wayne here, and I'm going to call my shot. I'm going to say they're going to win it. I'm calling it now. You heard it. So if they win it, you heard it. This is ahead of time. I'm not privy to any insider information, so I don't know. Anyway, with that said, back to Michelle and Natalie before we close out the show. Natalie and Michelle, super emotional, and understandably so. At the end of the contest, Michelle is, you can see all the emotion in her face and what this contest meant to her, and Natalie being there with her. And I can't remember what their relationship is. Either way, there was a lot of emotion there. There was a lot of emotion from Amy as well. And what I found interesting was Natalie had said, before they walked away, said that her 5-year-old daughter, after watching season 1 last year, or watching season 1, she saw Amy and was like, Mommy, this lady works at Lego. I can work at Lego too when I get older. And that, the little choke up that Natalie had in her voice was heartfelt. And it pulled on your corde tendine, right? Your heartstrings. And then what you had with Amy and her tears streaming down her face, I'm just like, I wasn't like, oh my God. I was just like, oh my God, this is oh, this is gut-wrenching. This is really tearing at you because you're seeing all these raw emotions in there because you have, I can't overstate this enough. The female dynamic in Lego is not near enough. There just aren't enough women in Lego. I don't know as far as the company. I'm just talking about in general as far as builds and stuff like that. And I don't mean to make this a gender thing. My point is, you go to conventions, you go to lug meetings, you go to chat with people. Majority of the time, it is a male-dominated convention or contest and stuff like that. Even looking at this contest, I'm pretty sure it was male-dominated. Heck, we have 3 sets of brothers left at the end. These girls went toe-to-toe with some of the best, if not the best, arguably, between the 2 seasons. So it was a really emotional moment. I really did appreciate that. It showed a little bit of, maybe vulnerability is not the right word, but just, an understanding there of how much that means to kids around the world. In this case, little girls. All right. So with that said, we will be back for the finale next week. On the backside of this episode, you guys, we've already done the Michelle and Natalie interview, and I need to edit it up and we'll get it to you. And then we've got something special coming at the end of the week. That's all I will say. We have something special coming at the end of the week. So you guys are going to get bing, 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 hit, straight into the weekend. So hope you guys are enjoying yourselves. Until next time, I'm your Minifigure host, Matt. Let's build on it.